Hello, dear friends. Welcome back at Lit E City, the one-stop destination for English literature. And today we are back with one of the important aspects of, we can say, at present literary studies, that is cultural studies. And today in cultural studies, we are going to discuss a very important theorist from India, or we can say Southern Asia, and his concept about national allegories or third world literature, which is propagated by Western academics. So, dear friends, the theorist we are going to discuss about today is none other than Aijaz Ahmad. Dear friends, Aijaz Ahmad is a leading South Asian Marxist social historian and cultural critic. He was born in Pakistan, and later he worked as a journalist, as a writer of books, as a critique of Western concept of South Asian or the colonies, the erstwhile colonies. His best known books include In Theory, Classes, Nations, Literature. This is one of the, we can say, most important single book which has tried to argue against the Western concept of Asian or South Asian literature. Other works include Lineages of the Present, Ideological and Political Genealogies of Contemporary South Asia, and his latest offering, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the imperialism of our time. So these are some of his very important works. Those who try to settle the question of South Asian literature. If we talk about the particular work we will discuss, In Theory, it is his, we can say, greatest contribution in the debate regarding literatures written by South Asian countries. It is his most recognized book on the debate regarding the concept of nationalism and third world literature. Ahmed actually launches a vigorous attack on some of major literary, cultural and social concepts of recent times. It is actually a collection of essays written by him, and according to him, the goal of the book is a careful Marxist rereading of those authors and ideas which are concerned with questions of empire, colony, migrancy, post-coloniality, and especially from 1960 onwards. These are the issues which have baffled critics of both East and West part of the globe, and these are some of very concurrent topics of debate. So अपनी इस book In Theory के अंदर Aijaz Ahmad ने, he has written many essays, and these essays deal with these topical themes. In the very beginning of this book, he points out that there are changes in the field of literary theory in past 2 decades, and it is caused by the shifts in world political power balance. Actually, after Second World War, the world was divided into 2 poles. There was capitalism and there was communist bloc. But in last 2 decades, we can say the power has been tilted to one particular pole, that is US, or we can say capitalist or liberal kind of world, and that is why there is change also in the field of literary theory, in the emerging, the battling grounds, वो भी सारे change हो गए हैं. The new theoretical approach concerned with colony and nation, it has actually, according to Ahmad, it has concealed the relationship between literature, literary theory and the world. क्या कहना चाह रहे हैं एजाज की? Actually, the new approaches of the West, they are just masks, and with these masks, these parts, these economic and political parts, they try to hide, they try to put in beneath the blanket the glaring issues of the literary theory and the world. And these recent developments are critically examined by Aijaz Ahmad because they offer only false knowledge of real facts. The glaring facts, the reality about colonial exposure, the reality about exploitation, it is not given and rather false knowledge is offered. So Ahmad tries to expose, Ahmad tries to uncover these theoretical situations of the Western academics. After the Second World War, nationalism, it is a key term, it emerged as the principal expression of resistance to Western imperialism. We have to understand this कि ये जो growing sense of nationalism था, it basically worked as a strategy of resistance to Western imperialism. On one side there was imperialism by the West, especially by the European countries and later by America also. They want to territorize most of the African and Asian countries. On the other hand, जो Asian countries थे, India, all in southern Asian countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, then India, and in Africa also there was growing spirit of nationalism, and there are variety of reasons from Indian subcontinent to Africa, Latin America, Pacific Rim, which includes Australia and these nations. In सब के अंदर there was growing sense of going back to the roots, or we can say a strong sense of nation. Now, in this historical context, the category of third world literature, dear friends, a very important term, third world literature, it emerged. Actually, it was Fredric Jameson. Fredric Jameson, he basically he was the leading Marxist critic of 80s and 90s. He published an essay in journal Social Text. This was the name of the journal, in which his essay Third World Literature in the Era of Multinational Capitalism, it published, and it highlighted, he coined the term category third world literature, which actually means the writing of the countries that were earlier European colonies and then become political independent. What he means by third world is not actually something third rated. It means the first world was pre-colonial world, which was neither we can say capitalist or anything else, socialist. It was pre-colonial, pre-capitalist world. The second world is obviously the capitalist world, the domain of power, and the third world is these newly political independent nations. He put forward the idea of national allegories, second important term. The first one is third world literature and the second one is national allegories about the literature written by the writer of diverse cultures, either from Africa, South America, Southern Asia, because they represented as having a single third world cultural logic. तो जेमसन क्या कहना चाह रहे हैं, that all the literature written by the writers are belonging to these countries, they fall into one particular category. They all write their national allegories. They all were infused so much with the spirit of nationalism that the story of their work is actually the story of their nation. This is the logic behind all the text, all the works written by these writers. Now, national allegory, it is a highly controversial concept and has been the subject of considerable debate, especially in post-colonial studies. How Jameson suggests, like Sambene Osama in novels, Zala, he says in his this particular book, he points out it is perfect illustration of a national allegory because the predicament of its central characters can only be fully understood from the perspective of the nation. So we can say by national allegory he means the novel is the story of not an individual, not a protagonist, but of the nation. जो वर्क है वो एक्चुअली में किसी एक हीरो, किसी एक पर्टिकुलर पर्सन की स्टोरी नहीं है. हिज predicaments, his dilemmas, his struggle, his resistance, or maybe her resistance. It is the story of the nation's dilemmas, predicament, resistance, and victories. And he basically he calls literary texts from third world as unmodern and seeing them representing older form of culture, and he claims that all third world texts are necessarily, I want to argue, allegorical, and in a very specified way they are to be read as what I will call national allegories. This is what he points out, national allegory, that when a critic he wants to analyze the text written by a writer belonging to third world, the critic must focus on the national issues, and the work should be read only in the light of this particular nationalistic attitude. By national allegory, actually he means a writing which reflects social, historical, political concerns of the time. Individuals' struggle, desire, and action, they are actually what? Only a minuscule representation of the nation the protagonist belongs to. Whatever the protagonist does, it reflects, we can say, the dimension, the macro level of the nation. The protagonist is the micro, work is micro, but it should be read in the macro sense. Now, thus all the writings of erstwhile European colonies are essentially allegorical in nature. Beneath the surface story, the story of nation also goes on. This is what he says. We can take another example of Salim Sinai, the famous hero of Midnight's Children. He was born on a stroke of midnight on the eve of India's independence. So both are born at the same time, Salim and independent India. Salim's fate is tied to that of post-independence India. The novel follows his life as it does India's national story. So we can read in Salim's story the story of India after its political independence. This is how Jameson points out majority of writer, most of the works written by these writers reflect the national consciousness, and that is why they can be read as national allegories. These are the points which are raised by Jameson. Now, what does Aijaz Ahmed do? His incisive analysis of the category of third world literature, he displays the impossibility of creating such categories. First of all, he refuses to accept that there can be a universal categorization, because he says that category of third world text ignores, it basically bypasses the specificity of a writer whose work is different from other writers in other language and culture. Ahmed actually points out that Jameson has put under one umbrella all diverse culture, languages and nations, which is not possible according to Ahmed. Writers written in southern India, writers writing in Pakistan, writers writing in Africa, writers writing in Australia, New Zealand, Latin American countries, they cannot share the similar, we can say, cultural ethos, and there is bound to be very different from each other. So to call all of them national allegories is, we can say, a very, very faulty misnomer. Actually, Ahmed rejected the very idea of third world. He says there is no such thing as a third world literature which can be constructed as an internally coherent object of theoretical knowledge. He says that in this world of deconstruction and postmodernism, it is very foolish to consider a category, a theoretical knowledge which can be very, you can say, defined as third world literature. Such a broad category in this world of fragmentation is not possible. The most important point Ahmed raises is his rejection of Jameson's idea that literature of the third world are necessarily or always national allegories. He says that Jameson neglects the fact that Asian and African literature do not adopt single metropolitan language. Like European and American literature, they all use one particular language, that is English. But it is not so the case with Asian and African literature. Most of the writers, majority of the writers, write in their native and regional languages. US and European scholars believe in metropolitan tradition because of translation. It is easily translated into one particular metropolitan language, that is English. It is not the case with Asia and Africa. Even today, there have been works written in regional and local native languages that have not been translated in official language or in English. So they have a variety of languages and not all of their works are translated in one particular language. So we cannot understand the totality of literature. We cannot guess the majority of viewpoints, the different viewpoints, because they are still untranslated and critics have not been able to read them. So to categorize them in one particular homogenized category, it is a glaring fallacy. Ahmed also points out how Jameson has given weightage only to those third world texts that can be treated as national allegory. He doesn't have many options because, as we have already pointed out, बहुत सारे जो टेक्स्ट हैं they are not translated in English, so he doesn't know the depth, the variety of literatures written by these countries. So he has limited options, and going by these limited options, he has created this category, national allegory. So dear friends, Ahmed shares history of Urdu literature. It's a very fascinating essay in this book that is not translated in English, which is definitely beyond the concept of national allegory. It is about Sufism, it is about love sonnets, it is about different other things which are beyond, we can say, national allegories. But Western critics like Jameson are not able to understand this because these works are not translated into English. Thus, Ahmed revises and refuses to accept Jameson's approach regarding the writings of third world nations, highlights the diversity of themes and treatment, and thus counters the very category third world. Okay friends, this was all in our chapter, our lecture on Aijaz Ahmed and his theme about rejection of category of third world literature. We will soon meet with some new concept and important writers. Keep watching, keep supporting. Thank you friends.